Good evening, everyone. We're going to give a few minutes for people to be able to join us. Hope everyone is doing well. Starting to get a little cloudy out there where we are, but still a beautiful, crisp evening. Good into this beautiful weather week we've been having. Good wine tasting weather. All right, I think we are in a good spot with where we are with registration. So we'll officially kick things off. Hello again, and welcome to VMFA Fridays After 5, presented by Chase. Taste of Art this evening will be focusing on the wines of Spain. Liz and I are really excited to welcome Leigh Rodgers from SAWM. I just did it. See, Sam. I'm going to say, Leigh, say it. SAWM Imports.
SAWM Imports.
SAWM. See, I always want to reverse those. If you work in the state of Virginia, you know SWAM is why. If you know SWAM, you know why I went there. Reversed it in my mind. So we're really excited to have you and excited to explore the wines of Spain, the two selections you brought to us. And if you haven't been to Taste of Art before, or if you have, it's always good for a reminder for us some tips on how this works. So this is a Zoom webinar, which means that you can see us. However, we cannot see you. I always say use that to your advantage as you like. Tonight, we're going to be asking for your impressions of the wine and art. If you're open and free to share, we encourage you to use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen rather than Q&A or any other feature. So keep it all in the chat. That gives us one box to focus on, and we will answer your questions as we go, read them out loud. If we don't get to it, we'll try to come back to it. This is a very informal webinar. We're here to have a conversation, and we want to make sure that you have every opportunity to participate and offer your comments. The other thing is, if you are pairing wine with us this evening, it's best to open bottles now. However, if you would like a tutorial on opening the Kava, we're going to offer that as we get into the first bottle of tasting. So with all of that housekeeping out of the way and my stumbling over the company name, just got to get it out there. I won't do it again. So I'm gonna turn it over to Leigh, who will tell us a little bit about where she works, what they do, what Leigh does, and then we'll get into our first selection. So Leigh, welcome to Taste of Art. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. So as we said, I work for a company called SAWM Imports, or SAWM. It's actually located here in Richmond. The company started in about 2013. We focus mostly on Spanish wine with some South American. We have one American producer that they actually sell here at Amuse. We also just picked up a little French portfolio. So I'm actually very new to the company. I've only been with them since the fall of last year. So I'm in my learning process as well, but I cover Richmond, surrounding counties, and Charlottesville as the sales rep. So we're gonna start off with a little Kava this evening. Do we want to do the introduction to opening?
Sure. So we just decided it would be fun if I show you kind of an easy way to open Kava. It's the way I do it at home, other than just ripping into it. But it's a lot easier than other ways. The first thing you do is there's a tab, and you just take the foil off. And I know I'm setting myself up to not be able to open this bottle of wine since we've opted to do it on camera. So I'm just setting myself up for something I know. So the next thing you do is you have the cage on top. I like to loosen the cage and not take it all the way off. So that way it gives me something to grip onto whenever I'm opening it. If you want to fail safe, I always say go ahead and put a napkin on top, but I'm just going to kind of wing it and show you. Then the trick to opening sparkling wine is to twist from the bottom and not the top. So you kind of hold the top. That's why I keep that cage on. Hold the top still and twist it from the bottom. And whenever the force is pushing it off, you just kind of hold your hand down and don't let it, or else it'll fly across the room. And you just want it to, that was loud, but to make a small noise. It should just burp, but that was a little bit more of a
Celebratory.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
And, the real way to pour sparkling wine is you could do flutes or you could do bigger glasses. I think since a Kava has this Kava has large bubbles to it, I think a large glass is nice. And the way to pour it is to just keep a continuous stream going until you reach where you're going to go. So it's proper service to not stop your pouring as you go and to just try to aim into the middle with a long, slow pour. And that's how you open Kava.
Very nice.
Nice.
Cheers. Lovely.
Cheers. Thanks, Liz.
Absolutely.
Big glasses are also better for actually getting your nose in and getting a nice sniff of that delicious.
Wow, that is good. Smelling.
Mhm. All right, so as we said, this is Kava Rosé. So this is from a winery called Amendes. They're actually in an ancient farmhouse in Catalan, as you can see on the map. So we are in northeast Spain, really close to Barcelona, actually, really close to the coast. So they have a bunch of different microclimates, which allows for many different varieties to be able to be grown here. So Pinot Noir is what this wine is made 100% from, which is not a usual Kava grape, but it is allowed in the DO. So you can make Kava with Pinot Noir and still call it Kava. The normal Kava grapes, regular grapes, are Xarel-lo, Parellada, and Macabeo. And the other Kavas that they make are made from those varieties. The name actually comes from the first resident of the Menzea, which is the name of the farmhouse, is a woman who founded the estate around 1186. It's actually still owned by a woman named Ana Valles, who works with her husband and the rest of the family to make wine and Kava in this area. Do we want to do a little,
Yeah, do you want to taste?
little smell and
Oh, it
taste?
smells so good. So I know that Champagne uses Pinot Noir a lot. Is there a reason why they chose that, or if it just
Well,
grows well in that area?
It just grows well in this area, they have found. Because of all the different microclimates, this area probably was one of the first discovered to be able to grow that many different varieties that are internationally known, rather than just the indigenous varieties in that area. So the name Kava actually comes from the word cave, which is where they're aged. They used to be called champagne or champagne, but we all know that that probably did not go over very well. So that was changed in the 1970s so as not to offend their French friends in the Champagne region. I'm surprised actually it took that long, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that it was not until the 70s that it was changed.
Mm.
But it has to come from this DO in order to be called Kava, just like champagne has to be from Champagne to be called champagne. The Amendes Vineyard is 48 hectares, or about 118 acres. And they're doing everything organic farming. It's not certified, but they are doing organic farming. It's a pretty small production, costs a lot to be certified organic, but that's just how they've always done it. Another interesting fact for Amendes is all of their fruit, the DO is actually Kava.
Yeah. What is a DO? Maybe go into that.
Denomination origin. So it's essentially like they have to use certain grapes in that area to make wine to use the word Kava on the bottle. So all of the fruit is estate grown, which in Kava, that's actually not really normal. A lot of people are buying bulk juice these days. So in a lot of the things that you see that are like mass produced, they're not actually growing their own fruit. They still have to follow the rules of the DO and use those particular varietals and make it the same way, but they don't have to grow their own grapes. But they have to leave the Kava on the lees once they make it. So it goes through second fermentation in the bottle and it's on the lees for 9 months. Amendes actually does longer. They do 14 months, which gives it a richer style. So you can smell it's a little bit yeastier, a little bit
I
richer.
was just, yeah,
It's a little bit
Breadiness.
more full bodied, a little bit breadiness. So it's actually a little bit more like a champagne style
Yeah.
than a lot of Kavas that you drink.
I think that's why I was curious why they use Pinot Noir, because it does remind me a little bit more of something in champagne. Yeah.
Mhm.
You'll see Pinot Noir used a lot for Rosado Kava. Another grape you'll see a lot for Rosado is Garnacha.
Hmm.
But you do see Chard and Pinot in this region. So like I said, they're doing 14 months in the bottle on the lees. Yeah,
It's lovely.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if anyone is tasting along with us, if
Yeah.
you're, pop in your impressions in the chat.
Audrey, how do you store the Kava if you don't use the entire bottle after opening it?
Oh man, I wish I had my,
You have the good one.
I don't have it on me. No, I do. Give me just a second. It's a little fun little lesson.
Yeah, it is.
So if you don't actually finish it, you can use.
Got him.
Yep.
This one's good.
Sorry, I was digging in my purse for a sec. But if you have a little champagne stopper, a little sparkling wine stopper, you just stick it in here, close it up, and it helps preserve the bubbles longer. You still want to drink it, I would say, within, you want to finish it off the next day.
Yeah.
This isn't going to keep its bubbles for a long time. But I'll take this out for samples and use this throughout the day. You still want to be careful taking it off because it will build up some pressure under there. So don't just pull it off right away because it might. I have shot one of these across a room tasting with a buyer before. It's a little scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see the other ones that have two arms that kind of clip over the side too. Those I think are more common.
Yeah.
I think this one's nicer, and I do think it holds.
It holds a little bit
seal
better,
better.
and it's a little bit easier to take off without just popping it and it flying.
Yeah. Yeah, I like those better.
Or you can just finish it in one sitting.
Right.
And you can find those kind of champagne stoppers really, where's the best place to find this? Anywhere,
Most local wine shops are going to sell them.
I mean, you could probably find it at Wegmans.
Yeah, I was going to say,
something like
Okay.
you could get it at the grocery store,
Yeah.
Amazon,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
I always say go to your local wine shop first and see
Yes.
if you can find it before you venture out.
And another question, what does it mean on the leaves? I think you mean, did you say lees?
Lees.
L-E-E-S?
So Lees, that's actually the dead yeast. So when it goes through second fermentation in the bottle, once the yeast is done doing its job in fermentation, they actually just leave the wine sitting on the yeast. And that's what gives it the body that it has, the richness that it has. So like I said, they have to sit, Kava has to sit for at least 9 months by the rules of the DO, but Amendes actually lets it sit longer. They prefer to do at least 14 months and up for their bottlings.
And lots of wines are made that way, not just Kava.
Not just Kava,
And there's
right.
lots of different wines are made that way, and that's part of method champenoise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. So not just sparkling wine either.
Not just sparkling, yeah. You can have white wine that's on the lees. You can have, there's a lot of different sparkling wines. And now, so this is the traditional method, which is method champenoise. They're not really supposed to put method champenoise on the label anymore. So it's
For
just
all wines or for just Kava?
for all wines.
Oh, cool. I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah, that's a thing. You still see it. You still see it, but it's not supposed to happen technically. It's supposed to say like traditional method.
Is that because of champagne?
Uh-huh.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Didn't know
Yeah, I didn't really know that either until like a couple months ago.
that. Wow.
And I'm excited that, we're tasting out something from a woman-owned winery, that has been woman-owned for generations, it sounds like, or founded as such. Is that
And
rare? Estate-owned, yeah. Is that like rare in Spain, or in the wine industry, kind of as a whole?
a little bit of both. Yeah. I mean, honestly, in all my years, there's definitely a lot of women winemakers and estate owners these days, probably a lot more than there used to be. So honestly, I was kind of surprised that this was originally owned at that time in like 1186
Yeah.
by a woman. And then, yeah, it's pretty cool that a woman still owns it and her family run it. There's also the team that's the marketing team, and our team that does exporting for Amendes and other wineries that we represent is a team of women as well.
Great. Yay.
Cool.
Hooray. Cheers to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so and again, if you're tasting with us, pop it in the chat. I'm trying to like pin the smell, the nose on this. I can't, it keeps like drifting back and forth, but for me between like super minerally in a way. But I know there's something else on there, but I can't quite. It's like a fruity something. I don't know.
I get a lot of berry, like
some
raspberry notes.
exactly.
Yeah.
You definitely, because of the time spent on the lees, I get a little bit more of that pastry brioche note in this than I do from other Kavas.
Yeah. Well, speaking of eating
Oh, my turn.
and food,
What is that smell?
what's on offer at Amuse that pairs well with this?
So I did pick 2 seafood options this evening, and this is the first of the 2 is grilled North Carolina shrimp, and it is served with black eyed pea salad, blood orange with local herbs, and preserved lemon aioli along the bottom. And chef really wanted me to stress that these are sustainably caught North Carolina shrimp, the good stuff, and not farmed. And it is delicious. It went very well with this. The blood orange was a cool combination, I think, because of the brightness.
Yeah, I can
to
see
go
that.
with kind of the breadiness of the wine or the yeast quality of it. I think it was a really nice contrast, but the wine with the berry quality of it, I think was really nice. And the grilled on the shrimp was also really good with it, which I liked.
Well, this Kava, all the Amendes Kavas to me have this really lovely acidity factor to them. So I can see this pairing really, really well with that dish. A little bit of the richness of the shrimp, because shrimp can be
and that
a little bit on the
aioli
richer style with the aioli.
It was super good. So, and it's also really pretty with.
It is very pretty.
Yeah, I was saying it complements the color of the wine really well.
I liked it, but it also flavor-wise was perfect.
And is this on the menu this week?
Yeah, right now. Yeah.
Okay. And you can also get both wines we're offering by the glass and Amuse.
Absolutely.
As well as too. So if your interest is piqued, definitely make a reservation.
Yes. Yeah, we're graduation, everything. We're busy, but it's good. And this is on our menu for most of the time. I think we've had it up for a little bit. So it should be available for a while because I really like it.
Yeah, it's delicious. It really is delicious.
For a while.
Well, Karen, going into the art for this evening, we'll be looking at 3 works of art from Spain or by Spanish artists from the 16th century, 20th century, and 21st century. Our first selection is the earlier one from the 16th century. And not only is it from Spain where we're talking about, but I just thought the color of this work complements the color of the Kava very, very well, as almost like the shrimp. So, I mean, you could put the shrimp on this platter. I mean, we wouldn't, because conservation would not be happy, but it just also goes with this idea of kind of feasting and celebrating, which I feel like Kava is definitely a celebratory sort of wine. So this work it's a charger, like I mentioned, so a pretty large platter, and it has Hispano-Moresque decoration, like I said, from the 16th century. It hails from Valencia, which is just south of the region that the Kava that we're drinking tonight is from, and a very specific spot in Valencia, Manises. And Manises was kind of a central production area for this type of what's called lusterware. So kind of a tin glazed ceramic with this sort of glaze. It's a metal oxide, a little bit of lead. And when it's fired, it reacts with the tin and the lead and creates this sort of pearly luster sheen. And it's really hard to tell in this image, but this work is on view. It's in our Byzantine galleries. So again, if you go for dinner and Amuse, lunch and Amuse with a glass, you can go see this work either before or after, so you can see it in person. And then what you won't be able to see is the back, and we have this great image of the back of the charger, which is equally kind of opulently decorated with these sort of acanthus leaf motifs and swirl patterns, and we see a lot of vine patterns here around sort of the quatrefoil indentations and a lot of geometric designs. So kind of one kind of repeated motif happens over and over again. This is pretty typical of this kind of pottery from the 16th century in this area. Little fuzzy image, but I wanted to zero in the center of the charger here. And if you can make it out, there's a little bowl here in the center, kind of in a shield. And this lip around him is raised. And it's, again, if you can tell, sort of these quatrefoil designs here are indentations in the charger. So it's got a lot of different sort of layers within the charger, so sort of built up. Probably made for display, might not have been used a lot, not too sure, or used for very special occasions. And that kind of like lusterware gave off a feeling of gold, right? So it's sort of a still ostentatious, but a little bit more economical expression of wealth, if you will, instead of a pure gold platter. Another reason they became really popular. But the bull is actually from the Boyer family crest, and the Boyers were kind of lords of Manises, and they ran kind of the market on these platters, on this kind of lusterware. And so they're the ones who sort of were in control of the manufacturing. They brought in designers from kind of Northern Africa or Iran to do the decoration. So there's a lot of influence from that country and kind of the tradition of lusterware. And they also brokered the sale and export of these wares. So Spain at this time in the 16th century was very transcultural. There was a lot of trade going on. And exporting, and this kind of lusterware became very popular across Europe and then influenced other ceramics. So like Majolica or Maiolica in Italy, this is sort of around the same time. So they took 10% off the top. So they were just really in control. And so that means a lot of this ceramics and pottery had the family crest on it. And then I just show, not from our collection on the left, but just an example of Iranian pottery from about the 13th century. So you can really see the influence and similarities here in the color and that kind of patterning and repetition of pattern. This has a little bit more blue in it. The kind of sections are divided with a blue glaze, and that sort of fell out of fashion in the 16th century when ours was made. But it's still influenced. I just, again, what I love about decorative arts in particular, there's influence from the past, but then designers that come after are also looking back to what was, popular centuries before as well. So this is sort of a continuation of that thread of the love of lusterware and kind of the celebratory nature of it. This is a work by Walter Crane, who is an English designer out of Lancashire, England. And this is known as Lancashire lusterware, but you still see that same kind of red and iridescent. And this actually has like a medieval theme to it. It's actually St. George slaying the dragon. And you can see the dragon kind of wrapping around the edges of the plate. It's a really cool piece. I don't get to talk about it very much. So I'm excited to share it with you. And again, so when you're in the museum and kind of pop into the Byzantine galleries, I definitely encourage you to spend some time with this piece and appreciate the luster and that really pretty pink color. All right, so we're gonna dive into the second selection, which is our red for this evening.
I am very excited about this wine. Should we pour some?
Absolutely. Shall we?
Shall we? So we are going to the other side of the country, still in the northern region, to a region called Ribera Sakura. There's not a lot of wine that comes out of this region. The two main grape varietals are the one we're drinking right now, which is Menzea from Finca Mayara. This is Cuesta de los Olivos, which loosely translates to olive grove. So as you'll see in a couple slides, the vineyards are on these super steep terraces surrounded, and this particular one is surrounded by olive trees, which you can actually get in this wine when we dive into it a little bit. First, I want to kind of talk about the region. I picked this specifically because, well, there are a couple reasons. One, the label's gorgeous. So just thinking art museum, you know, I wanted to kind of pick something that was a little bit out of the norm. And also, you know, it's a region that not a lot is known about. I had to do a little bit of research on this as well, but it's really, really fascinating. So as you can see, we are in, like I said, the Northwest, actually in the Galicia region, which is, I found out, known as Green Spain. It's believed that the Ribera Sakura name, it comes from 18 monasteries that were founded in the early Middle Ages between the 8th and 12th centuries. So a lot of the wineries are in these super deep valleys on rivers. This winery actually is, you can access it much easier by boat, which is really cool. Viticulture in this area had a big push from Romans who actually arrived in the area in search of gold. However, modern winemaking was established by the Benedictine and Cistercian order of monks. So the founder of this winery went in like 20 some years ago. It's like about 20 years ago. He and his buddies, evidently, this is a story that my boss, the owner of this company, told me because he hears different stories every time he goes to visit. But the founding of this winery started because he and his investor friends were riding their motorcycles around the area and found all these old like houses that the monks lived in. And then on the other side of the river, there was this building so that they discovered that they turned into the winery. So they essentially like rehabbed this whole land that was completely covered in forests and rebuilt this building using all the slate in the area. So yeah, you can see from like one side of the river to the other. So essentially it's the whole village now. So they turned a lot of these houses that the monks lived in into homes for themselves and created this whole like village and started the winery. So
It's amazing. And that was, that took about 20 years kind of from start, or?
Well, the winery started about 20 years ago.
Okay.
Did the monks grew grapes as well
Uh-huh.
and made wines? Did they use any of the original vines, or did they just kind of figure? Oh, really?
Yeah, they did.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Wow.
So, and actually evidently got a lot of like went back and forth with France
Mhm.
to kind of learn viticulture practices so that they can make wine in this area, which is pretty interesting. So Finca Mayara, like I said, started about 20 years ago. It was all Roman terraces. The area itself is pretty interesting and very, very hard to farm because of the steep terraces. It's definitely not, and it's all going like up from a river. So it's a really hard area to grow, but the indigenous varietals, Menzea, and then the white is Gadea, which you actually have
Mhm.
on the list,
Yeah,
correct?
I do. Mhm.
So the white of this, the same name, is on the list here at Amuse as well.
Do you know what river it is? We have a question.
Oh, I can find out. I don't actually, but that's a really good question. What is the river's name? What's the second part of the question?
Is it the door?
Is it the door?
I don't know.
Doro.
Doro.
Oh,
No,
Doro.
it's not. No, it's a different one. I think it began with an M. I don't have it in my notes. I don't think so.
No.
I can find out exactly which river it's on while we're talking about art. I will do a little research and I'll come back in at the end with the name for you. So the winemaker who we have a picture of, who I can't
Oh,
wait.
yes, sorry.
You're good. There he is. So evidently this gentleman is quite the character. The owner of my company, Ben, loves him and talks very highly of him. His name is Raul Perez. He actually just hired, I found out, a new winemaker. So he'll still be involved, but the new winemaker will kind of help him along, but he'll be kind of the head. But he works at a couple different wineries. The area itself is cool mornings, which evidently turn into absolute scorching heat from about 11 a.m. to middle of the afternoon. And then the temperature drops pretty quickly. So that's like summertime going into harvest, which actually helps. They have this very Atlantic climate. So the grapes love it. These particular varieties do very, very well here. I'm very curious to hear what everyone has to say about this wine because I'm completely enamored with it. It's really good with a slight chill on it.
And it should. I put it in the fridge before you came.
It's a very light red. It's perfect for this time of year. Very, very food friendly. Does it have a compatible name in the region? No, it's actually, so sorry, you want to read the question?
No, the question is, does the grape, the Menzea grape, have a compatible name in other regions?
No, not that I'm aware of. So the Menzea grape is an indigenous variety to this area. However, I was just getting ready to say, when they were first making wine with this, they actually kept mistaking it for Cabernet Franc because of the style. They kept thinking it was Cab Franc.
Is it the vegetal quality?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I first tasted this wine, I kept saying like, oh, this reminds me so much of like Loire Valley Reds or Cabernet Franc from Loire. And then I actually found that out. And I was like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. It smells and tastes and has a lot of the same characteristics of Cab Franc. So, and this is, I will say, a little bit of a lighter style of Menzea. I certainly have some in my portfolio that are a bit earthier, a little bit heavier, but they can kind of run the gamut just like other grape varieties can.
I think it's also, I mean, coming from a food side of it, I really like to see wines like this, and I buy a lot of wines like this because I think that they please a lot of different people. So when I come to a table and I have people asking me what kind of wine they want, and everyone has kind of something slightly different to say, this type of wine really fits a lot of boxes.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's very food friendly as far as like if you have seafood or if you have light meats or anything like that. So I always think that style is really good for a restaurant.
Yeah, I was telling people I was taking this out the last couple of weeks and people were asking about food and I kept coming back to grilled meats, like just thinking about this time of year, being outside, putting a slight chill on this, it would just be the perfect. Yeah. But also, yeah, light, like seafood, a little bit heavier stuff, seafood wise would be really good.
Yeah, you could do a lot.
So I think before we get to the selection from Amuse to talk a little bit about food, we do have a couple of images from production, and I don't know, Leigh, if you wanted to talk anything.
Right.
About
So
images.
The images here are the one on the right is foudres. So the wine is actually fermented in these large French oak foudres, and then coming from there, it is put into smaller neutral French oak barrels, but only for 3 months. So you get a little bit of oak on this, but you do not get much. Only a couple months in neutral, it's not going to do a whole lot of influence on the wine, which keeps it light. It's a little bit herbaceous, a little bit spicy.
So why would you even put a little oak on it if it's not going to impart that much quality? Is it for the body?
It's for the body. Yeah, you just want a little bit of that texture body wise to it. Yeah.
Cool.
But I also get a nice salinity to this wine. The coastal influence. I can also, coming back to the fact that it's surrounded by olives.
Yeah, variety.
You definitely get a lot of brininess to
Yeah,
it.
I definitely taste that. Birch just shared that Menzea is also known as Gian in Portugal. I think I'm saying that right.
Oh, cool.
Portuguese,
I've never heard of that.
In the northwest part of Portugal.
Thank you. Very cool. JN, I have to write that down.
Yeah.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Okay, so you were talking a little bit about it being a restaurant-friendly wine, Liz.
Well, yeah, I definitely went a little off the wall and we have soft shell crab on the menu, which I really wanted to showcase because it's, the time of year for that. But Greg paired it with sausage gumbo. So I think because of the earthiness of the gumbo and I don't want to say fried quality, but the fried of the soft shell really, really nicely with this. And it's got cornbread and rice with it because it should, but they all pair very nicely with this red. So this was a good example of being able to cross a lot of different things. Greg wanted me to show something to go with the soft shell or to do something with the soft shell. And what are you going to pair with the sausage gumbo and a soft shell crab?
That's a tough pairing.
But this worked really well.
Yeah.
I feel like too, like really great. Like I said at the top of the show, kind of this weather this week is great wine tasting weather, but especially I feel like this, like in the cool nights we've been having, like with this gumbo and the soft, like it's just like a good temperature feel. I don't know with the wine.
Yeah, we were all eating it yesterday outside. Yeah. It was very nice.
And I'm going to take it upon myself to just make Menzea like a well-loved, just grape that everyone really wants to get behind because you don't see it. So I very much so appreciate the fact that you guys wanted to do this and highlight it and put it on the menu because it's such a cool varietal. And I always, it's fun. I'm still learning where everyone's still learning about all these varieties that you don't get to drink very much.
Yeah.
But you don't learn and you don't, it's just fun to explore rather than drinking the same thing. So now I know I love this because I love Cab Franc, so it makes perfect sense. And you can just kind of run from there and you just are constantly exploring and learning about new varieties.
I think that's kind of the best way to think about wine too, because I think a lot of times wine is one of those things that people are really nervous about. Oh, yeah. And that's just because there's so much of it. You could learn forever, and someone who's an expert who does this for a living, you still learn. And
I'm extremely overwhelmed on a regular basis.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things that you just taste more of and try more of and figure out what you like.
Exactly.
So
get out of your comfort zone, but also, coming to places where you have someone like Liz and the team here that is excited to recommend things and put different stuff on because it allows people to learn and get out of their box a little bit.
Well, yeah, and I love a lot of we saw the table outside that had that Riesling, the 100% Riesling. When I see things like that, they're like I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you picked that one. And so when people want to talk about it and pick different wines, I get really happy about it.
So what?
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say like same process is true about art. You just keep learning. There's always something new to learn, and really encourage people to like try out a new artist or think about a work of art that they may not know much about, but that doesn't matter as much. It's about your experience and kind of then you learn as you go, and and then hopefully you just keep going, right? And there's always something new to learn. So very similar.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, speaking of, so we're talking about Spanish art. I could not resist throwing in a Picasso. You just kind of have to just do it when you're talking about Spain, art from Spain. So this work also on view in the museum right now. It's in right off of the main floor, right off of the atrium, in those little galleries of kind of modernist art there. So again, you can maybe start with this work and go up to the lusterware upstairs, or start upstairs and then kind of work your way down. This is called Still Life, Wine Glass and Newspaper. And before we kind of get into this work, I actually want to spend a little bit of time just taking a look at it because it's got a lot going on in this little painting. And I thought we would just kind of talk about it a little bit. And I know Liz and Leigh, we've talked about it some. And I might just throw out a question to our extended family here in the webinar of kind of, it's called Wine Glass and Newspaper. So I'm kind of going to challenge everybody to kind of look closely and see if we can kind of pick apart where that wine glass is. So just take a few seconds to kind of run your eyes across the screen and type in the chat on kind of, if you can identify parts of a wine glass. I'll wait and see if anyone's willing to just take a stab. And again, this isn't quizzing you. This is exploring it together. Because it took me a little bit, just have to spend time with it to investigate the work. And that's what Picasso is trying to do here, right? Okay, Sue is saying 3 black stripes in the middle. That is definitely part of this kind of it's more like a goblet than a glass.
Hold more wine.
So if you can think about kind of, it could be like ridges on a glass. Any other parts? And you can look at the brown is holding it. Yeah, so Sue kind of mentions this kind of swath of brown paint kind of in the bottom third of the composition. So kind of right here. And if you look around this kind of ring, so this would be like the base of the goblet. So actually it's sort of a play on positive and negative space. So the positive space is sort of the brown, and just the negative space is kind of, he's painting around it to create, right, the weight of the bottom of the glass. So kind of here's my glass. So we're kind of looking at the base here sort of tilted up. And, Picasso is experimenting with cubism, style of cubism, which is abstracting, what he's seeing. And this is a still life abstracted, but flattened out. So around this time frame, like 1913, 14, he's sort of veering away from the cubist style of kind of like of cubes, right? Where it's kind of 3-dimensional and kind of playing with space. Which is called Analytic Cubism. And he's shifting, because influenced by his friend George Braque, who's working in collage, into breaking out shapes but flattening them out. So it's a very flat kind of composition, but still broken apart, if that makes sense. Sue's asking about 2 sections of dots. Yeah. So there's a section here that comes straight across, kind of where those 3 lines are, maybe like the goblet part or the actual kind of cup of the wine glass. And then there's another section of dots that's coming up here. So this is where he's being very playful. Picasso is being playful here. And again, suggesting and sort of abstracting at the same time. Light. So and then we're going to do this together. I'm going to do this together. I encourage you, if you do have a glass, and if you kind of hold it up to a light source that you may have around you, and you can kind of see, I've got a window here, and just the edge of my glass has this kind of light that's bending and shifting. Or again, if you're looking through the body of your wine and can kind of twirl it and see how the light is hitting and revealing that beautiful red color, either at the bottom of your glass or the top of your glass, and how the light is really bringing that color to life a little bit. So that's what he's doing. This is sort of his interpretation of light kind of scattering through the wine glass, which I think is really cool, thinking about, he's not only bending actual objects that he can hold, but light that you can't really hold. So he's having a lot of fun with this painting. And the other dots at the top have been interpreted to be sort of wallpaper or kind of something in the background. Again, sort of abstracted just to color. And at this time period, these are known as kind of confetti or sparkles. It's a very short stint of time where he incorporates this kind of stippling method into his work. So the rest of again, it's sort of a suggestion of a wine glass. And I will say too, the brown parts have sand mixed into the paint. So there's also sort of a textural quality, additive quality here that is kind of experimenting with material, which is new for Picasso. And then also, is the sand the confetti? Nope, the sand is down here at the brown, at the base of the glass, kind of mixed into the black and the brown. This, as far as I could tell when you're up close, does not have sand in it, as far as I could tell. But again, if you're up close to it and you see something different, please do let me know. And then the base of the table is here, again, broken up by the glass. So again, playing with perspective a little bit. And then you see the newspaper which is to the right. So that would be the header of the newspaper. And he is in France painting this work, where he spent most of his time at this time period, early teens. So it's the J-O-U at the beginning of journal, or J-O-U in French is also jouer, which means to play. So it's a little bit of like playfulness again on the part of Picasso. Another thing he's trying that's very different is the canvas itself. So do you see the oval that kind of surrounds the still life? That's actually on a piece of canvas that he has cut. So that's painted onto this canvas, this oval canvas. And then he has affixed the oval to another piece of canvas. So the rectangle is another separate piece of canvas. So he's actually collaged the painting on top of another canvas. So this is, again, him just sort of experimenting during this kind of synthetic movement. So here he is. This is about 1908, so just a few years before this was painted, just to give you some idea of what he was looking like. And at this time, he's experimenting with synthetic cubism. And then just some context to, this isn't the only time that he's playing around with collage or the idea of wine glasses or newspaper. This is a pretty famous work, still life with chair caning from 1912, so a couple years before our piece. This is from the Musée Picasso. And the chair caning here is actually almost like a vinyl. So, or if anyone ever used contact paper, am I like giving my age away? Anyway, it's kind of like that. So it's sort of cut, out sticky of a chair. And he's wrapped the entire canvas in rope. And again, an interpretation of this is as if you were looking through like a cafe table that's glass. And so the newspaper is on top, the wine glass, which is right here. This is like a slice of lemon with a knife. And so everything's sort of laid out on this cafe table, and as if you're looking down through it to see the chair underneath, which is also really cool. Oh, okay, so we've got someone has, thanks Birch. So Birch, yeah, so yes, so this is from our website. Thanks, Birch. So you can actually go on our website and our collections page and read the label copy that's with that work. And then again, I just pair it with another painting that, again, he did around the same time. This was when he was in Avignon in France. And you can see this is another example of him using this kind of confetti, right? And this is a much more vibrant work. It's a larger work, but he's still playing around with this idea of confetti and kind of flattening things out. And I think it's the same table as this piece. So you can see the braiding here at the edge of this table is very similar to the braiding here. Maybe the same wine glass, we can't really tell. But he's using kind of the same kind of props. Again, just experimenting and playing around at this kind of brief little moment in time, 1912, 13, 14. So, next time you're having a glass of wine, think about, oh, he said not from our website. Here's where I found it. Well, then someone stole it from our website. I'll tell you that. It's very similar to our copy. So again, next time you're having a glass of wine, just think about what it would look like, broken up, smashed out, or, try drawing it yourself and see if you can capture how you would capture that light. I think he's just having a really fun time experimenting here with things that are around him, from day to day. Speaking of light, I think the last work we're going to take a look at is something, if you come to the museum a lot, in the past, few years, you're very familiar with in our sculpture garden. Like Picasso, Jaume Plensa, who is also from Spain. He was born in Barcelona, and he is also very interested in light and how it plays on really a surface and how people interact with light. This is Chloe. It was made in 2016, and we commissioned Jaume Plensa to do this for our sculpture garden. So it's a site-specific work. This is Jaume here in 2015. And he is known for his site-specific large sculpture or installations. And Chloe is similar to a couple of other works by the same name at the Seattle Museum of Art. So if you've been there, it might look familiar, or the Albert Knox Museum in Buffalo. But ours is specific to our site. So he actually came to the museum, studied the sculpture garden, had a hand in deciding where this work would be placed. And it's a very deliberate placement between kind of the new expansion and the Poly Center, which you see pictured behind here, and this tree. So all of those were elements that he thought of as he was conceiving this work, this massive sculpture for our space. Before I kind of get into Chloe a little bit, just again, I always like to show other examples of artists' work. So on the left is Crown Fountain in Millennium Park in Chicago. So this is a really fun piece, you know, once you're up for traveling again and find yourself in Chicago, I definitely encourage you to seek this out. This is right by the Art Institute of Chicago. And it's super fun. I don't know if Liz or Leigh, you've ever been there. I
live in Chicago.
Yeah.
I actually saw that a couple years ago and like was totally, I didn't realize it was the same person.
Yeah, it's so fun. I mean, it's, again, he has a very much playful side to him, and he's really interested in human connection and interaction, but also the importance of tolerance and representation. And so in this work, these are ginormous kind of projected screens that are made up of blocks. Kathy Gasparini is going to Chicago this weekend and excited to see this installation. Yes. Okay. Yes. So Kathy, I can't wait to hear what you think about it. Definitely play and like stay and watch it. You can actually watch this on YouTube. So if you just look up Crown Fountain, you can see images of it moving. So these are projected images that change. And you can see the water kind of shooting out of their mouths. So they'll start, these people will start off smiling and then change their expression and then form sort of a spout, and then the water will just shoot out. And they'll play off of one another in a timed succession. So again, it's really cool. And the whole base of it, so where all the people are, is a very, very thin sort of water surface that you can kind of walk through. So kids are, you know, in the summer, it's just full of kids playing. It's a lot of fun and really fun at night too. And then on the right is, again, just another kind of medium that he's working with, this time in stainless steel. Inisa number 6, this is in Sweden. Again, he has a couple other iterations of this work around the world. Again, a kind of a carrying on that theme of the human figure and tolerance and cross-cultural exchange. The work is, and it's hard to tell on this, but it's letters from 9 different alphabets. So Cyrillic, Greek, Japanese, Chinese, Arabic. So it's all kind of mixing together to make up this person. And again, that's what he's really interested in. Chloe, you know, there's a lot going on here with this work, and not only just sort of what he feels it represents, but also what it's made of, and kind of the process is pretty interesting. So he takes a scan of his model's face, and then he distorts that sort of on the computer. A very technical term, on the computer. And then he translates that into this particular material, which is a kind of a stainless steel structure on the inside, and then a mix of resin and marble dust on the outside. So it sort of skins the stainless steel. This particular work is the first time that he cast a work in one cast. The other Chloes are sort of blocks stacked on top of one another, cast separately. So this is all one smooth surface. So that's pretty unique to our Chloe. I will say that if you've seen Chloe lately, you know, 2020 was rough for all of us. And so she's sort of, she's flaking a little bit, but I want everyone to, it's okay. We're gonna be addressing that and resurfacing the work pretty soon. I don't know when, but that is to come. So don't worry, Chloe will get a facelift and we'll protect her from further flaking. But if you've seen her or if you've interacted with her, you'll notice that depending on the light of the day, the time of the day, the color of her can change. You know, it's that marble dust is reflecting like our Picasso glass, reflecting the light, and she'll turn pink. You know, if it's a sunset, she'll turn gray if it's cloudy outside. So and as you walk around her, she'll kind of shift her perspective because she's a little bit flat, and that's something that Plenza's really interested in. He has always been fascinated by like profiles on coins, so gonna kind of like any coins that we have or anywhere, you know, there's a face usually on it and it's in a profile. And he said as a kid, he'd always wondered where the rest of the face was. Like he'd turn over the coin, why isn't the rest of the face there? So this is sort of him sort of playing again with this idea of kind of a three-dimensional face or object kind of disappearing, right? And being flattened out, very similar to Picasso, but this is just kind of in a sculptural form and bigger. And then finally, you know, her eyes are closed. I mean, to me, and I open this up for comments or, sorry, I'm seeing lots of questions in the chat, which I will get to, but she looks very calm to me, but I open that up for any other interpretations that might be out there. So if I don't know, Leigh or Liz or anybody in the comments, you know, what could she be thinking or kind of what emotion is she expressing with this sort of, with her eyes closed and looking downwards? I'm just kind of wondering what everyone else thinks.
I was taking daily walks with my friend that lives nearby, and we would come through here pretty much every day. And it was always really fascinating to me, like you said, the color changes, and I almost kind of think like the way you could read her expression also changes depending on the weather, the lighting. Like I thought it was really interesting because obviously you can't walk past her and not look, right? So every day I would look, and I was always really interesting to see how I would interpret it differently on my walks, depending on the weather, the season.
Yeah.
We started in, you know, all through 2020 and through the winter. So I was through here quite a bit. So I think it just depends on, in my opinion, depends on, you know, the environment, what it's like outside, the weather, the lighting.
Absolutely.
Liz, do you?
Yeah, look at her every day.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say, just coming out.
You stare right out at her out of the window. Yeah, I always think of her as contemplative, and that's kind of, but it's also a very dynamic sculpture. So I get that. It somehow has that juxtaposition of being very serene, but very dynamic at the same time, which I think is really interesting to achieve that. It's a really cool piece to get to look at every day because you don't pull the same thing from it every time you look at it. So, I mean, that's one of my favorite things about art in general is like the more you look at it, the more you see. And so I work at a pretty cool place that I get to look outside every day and see it and think about it. So yeah, I appreciate it for sure.
Yeah. And definitely, I think Plenza would love hearing, you know, both of your impressions and the kind of commentary about it. Just depends, right? It changes. How it's interacting with the environment, you know, how you're feeling about it, or that can change from day to day. And that's what he wants. Like it's, you know, that's his aim, to kind of see how this work interacts with the landscape. But also it's really important to him that, you know, what the emotions are of the people who are looking at this work. So he's a very kind of viewer-centered artist. And appreciates what the viewer brings to the work or helps activate the piece. A couple of questions in the chat. What is the significance of Chloe, the name? So that's the name of the model. An easy answer. Someone else asked, what does inisa mean? So that's the work we talked about with the letters. That's actually named after the quarry, the limestone quarry in Spain. It's right outside a village of the same name. The steel sculpture sits on a limestone slab. So he's kind of giving credit to the source of the material there. And Audrey shared, when you said she was flaking, it resonated with me. I thought you meant she was like flaking out or wandering mentally, emotionally. Yeah, could be two for sure. It kind of depends on what she's thinking in sort of this meditative state. Meditation is a little bit about flaking out. It's kind of like you let your mind wander. Um, okay, and Audrey's also saying because her eyes are closed, it's easier to project your own emotions on the piece. That's really interesting. So it sort of like cuts you off and you can kind of see yourself there maybe a little bit easier. Also, she reminds me of a Buddha sculpture. How so, Audrey? What about her makes you think of a Buddha sculpture? Just curious. If you're open to sharing.
I was going to mention just what you were talking about, the people walking by and the people that are looking at her. I really enjoyed watching people that had obviously never seen her before, like look at it for the first time, especially kids. We would just stop and kind of watch people's reaction. And that was really, really cool.
They do the walk around.
Yeah, they do the walk around.
Yes, do the walk around for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Sort of the joy of discovery with other people. Yeah, that's really cool. And that's another, and I will say too, I mean, Plenza, there's a great quote from him. We have a really great video of him on our Learn site, or if you go to our YouTube channel and just type in his name, you can watch it. And he says that one of the things he really believes in is, quote, how well we are when we're together. And I think, you just talking about kind of observing other people and kind of sharing in that joy of discovery with them, even if it's from an observational standpoint, I think the importance and the feeling that we get when we're together, I think especially coming out of, when we're still in pandemic mode, I just want to remind people, but, slowly that's hopefully changing and we can come back together again. And, part of that is kind of experiencing the sculpture garden, experiencing this work, or experiencing, even though we're virtual here, coming together and experiencing this great wine and having this really great conversation around the work of art. So I think wish Plenza was here. He would love it. I know he would love the wine probably too. He's very Spain proud. So again, if you come to the museum to enjoy this wine, you can see all of these works we talked about today. You could start outside with Chloe. I definitely encourage you to walk around, see other people reacting, go inside, check out the lusterware, check out our still life with a Picasso, and you can end up in a Muse, or you can do it the reverse way. That's fine too. And so we're at 6:30. It goes by so fast. I want to thank Leigh so much for spending time with us and sharing your expertise.
I want to say real quick, the name of the river is the Minho.
Oh, thank you, Liz.
Yeah. Mino. And evidently a lot of the vineyards do come up directly off of the Minho River.
Nice research on the fly.
Sorry, real quick, I found it.
That was awesome.
It's a good thing for me to know, so, thank you.
And Kristen has typed in, thank you, Kristen has dropped in the link to Plenza's video in the chat. So definitely click on that if you're interested to hear straight from the artist. It's always best and great. That's one great thing about contemporary art. You can hear the artist's words from himself. And lots of thank yous. Thank you all. Fridays have been awesome. Thank you. We really enjoy these. And I will say, if you want to keep enjoying them, we have 2 more coming up. So Friday, May 28th. May 28th. I'll be chatting with the folks from Reason Beer out of Charlottesville, Virginia. We'll be looking at some American works of art that tie thematically with those selections. And then on Friday, June 11th, Liz and I will be back doing some rosé, one from California and one from France with the Robin Cellars. Thank you, everybody. Everyone's so nice in the chat. You guys are so nice. So again, thank you for joining us for Taste of Art presented by Chase, and really appreciate you all, and hope you have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I've got a sinking ship.
Yeah, you're like.
Bye.